In those homes, there was usually a jar kept on top of the refrigerator, not for cookies or spare change, but for what they called a rainy day. That jar was a quiet form of security. After long shifts, at the end of the week, women would come home, reach into their bags, take out a few bills, and place them inside without saying much. The lid would be closed, and life would continue. No explanations were given, yet even children understood what it meant. It meant they were not living on the edge. Families of that time lived by routines. Saturday mornings began before cartoons. Children stood side by side at the kitchen sink, washing the dishes left from the night before. In the next room, clothes for church were being ironed. Steam filled the house with the smell of starch and warm cotton. One washed, the other dried. No one complained. Complaining meant more work. And besides, this was simply what needed to be done. Everyone had responsibilities. This way of life extended beyond a single household. In the neighborhood, children swept porches before breakfast on weekends. Some were out before dawn, delivering newspapers. The sound of bicycle chains clicking through quiet streets while most people were still asleep. Everyone contributed. Everyone mattered. On Sundays after church, families walked to the elders' homes for dinner. The walk itself was a ritual. Nice dresses, stiff shoes that pinched by midday, and streets where everyone knew your name. Neighbors watering their lawns, familiar faces waving from porches. As they reached the steps, the smells came first. Greens simmering, cornbread, something sweet baking in the oven. Those houses had rules that never needed repeating. Hands were washed without being told. Plates were not touched until everyone was seated. Thanks were given even for food you didn't particularly like. After the meal, while adults talked in voices that rose and fell like music, children sat quietly and listened. They heard about factory shifts, bills, weddings, illnesses, and people who needed checking on. Children were not shielded from reality. They heard about layoffs and late rent, but they also heard about solutions. Neighbors who loaned money, church funds that helped with groceries, relatives who took children in when a mother needed rest. On summer evenings, people sat on front steps, shelling peas into metal bowls. Fathers who came home early, still in uniform, would sit down and take a handful of shells. They worked in silence. The only sounds, the snap of pods and peas dropping into the bowl. Then a simple sentence would be spoken, heavy with meaning. If you know how to take care of things, no one can tell you that you're not enough. It wasn't fully understood at the time, but it was remembered. Even when the streetlights came on, children stayed outside, playing ball in the middle of the street. A mother's voice would call from a window, and everyone would scatter, running toward their own front doors, breathless and dusty. Inside, the house was warm and familiar, the smell of dinner still hanging in the air. To save on the gas bill, children bathed one after another in the same water, then sat in the living room while the news played on television. Adults nodded or clenched their teeth, but they always watched. You need to know what's going on in the world, they said. You can't walk around ignorant. Lessons didn't come as speeches. They came through example, through how things were done, what was expected, and how people carried themselves even in hard times. They learned how to make a way when there wasn't. They learned that dignity cost nothing, but losing it cost everything. They learned that their people would be there for them, and that they were expected to be there in return. No one sat them down to teach these things. Only rhythm of the days, in the way people moved through the world with their heads held high. Even when the world itself was not fair.